Welcome to a special episode for Halloween!
Okay, it's not that special. I'm just making a 10-minute video with spooky stories and I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, let's go. A 16-year-old girl is house sitting for a family friend. Late one night when she was all alone, she hears a weird noise coming from the basement. The noise wouldn't stop, but because she was by herself, she decides not to go down the basement as fear begins to creep into her mind. She calls 911 and explains her story and tells them not to rush as it is probably nothing. Within 2 minutes, several cops are at her door. 4 cops make their way down to the basement and one stays with the girl outside. She hears yelling and moments later a deranged-looking man is brought up by the police. He was found sitting on the washer banging a machete between the washer and dryer trying to lure her down. She asked how they knew he was down there and they said when she called the police and hung up, the phone operator heard a second click. He was listening. This one gives me chills. The end of the line. During the summer, my friend Jay went mountain climbing. He lost his footing and fell off a steep cliff face. Luckily, he landed on a ledge and it saved his life. However, he was badly injured and had to be rescued. He hit his head in the fall and when they brought him to the hospital, he was still unconscious. The doctor examined him and found a swelling in his brain. He had to have surgery immediately. They were in the operating room for hours and they managed to reduce the swelling, but he was still in a coma. A few days later, he recovered and I went to visit him in the hospital. He told me that while he was unconscious, he had a very strange dream. In the dream, Jay found himself standing in a deserted train station. There was no one else in sight. When the train pulled into the station, he got on board. There were no other passengers on the train. Jay was completely alone. After a long time, the train started slowing down and pulled into another station. He looked out the window and saw that the platform was deserted. Just then, he heard a low, crackling voice over the intercom. Next stop, final stop. Next stop, end of the line. Something about the announcement sent a chill down his spine. He jumped out of his seat and managed to get off the train just as the doors were closing. That was the moment he awoke from the coma. The doctors told him that he was lucky to survive. For a while, he had been lingering between life and death, they said. While Jay told me about his dream, I could see he was becoming upset and his face was growing pale. I asked him why it troubled him so much and he said, "What if I hadn't gotten off that train station? What would have happened if I stayed on the train to the end of the line?" There was this house. 5 little girls and 2 adults were staying there. One of the girls, particularly the oldest one, was walking outside and picked up a crow's nest with 6 eggs in it. She dropped it, leaving the crow's nest on the cold ground, all 6 eggs cracked. The baby crows were dead from her carelessness and curiosity. The girl thought nothing of it, didn't care, and walked on past the mess of a nest. That night, she laid in her bed and thought of the crow's nest and the 6 crows she killed. She thought only a mere second, then heard a loud bang. She looked over at her door where she found 6 red eyes, followed by 6 screams. She ran in her living room to find all 6 family members were dead, picked apart and mutilated. Written on the wall in blood was, "Curiosity killed the humans." Well, damn. A teenage girl was hired as a babysitter by a rich couple somewhere in California. The parents went out for a late dinner date but gave the babysitter freedom to watch TV in another room. The girl did as she was told but found the life-size clown statue displayed in the room too disturbing, so she called the owners and asked if she could cover the statue with a blanket for the evening. Surprised, the couple immediately asked her to call the authorities because they didn't have a clown statue. I would immediately have a heart attack. Fuck that. A girl got on the train one night. She sat down opposite this woman who was sat between 2 men. She wasn't too bothered about them except the fact that the woman seemed to be staring at her, but she couldn't quite see because the woman had her hood up. At the next stop, a man got on the train and sat next to the girl. After about 5 minutes, the guy whispered to the girl, "Get off on the next stop with me. It's important that you trust me." At the next stop, the girl got off the train with the man and watched the train speed by. The man turned to the girl and said, "Thank God, I'm a doctor and that woman was dead." The 2 men beside her were holding her up. What the fuck? A new fear unlocked. Trains. Lover's Lane. A teenage couple is in a deserted lover's lane making out in their car. After a short while, the radio stops to announce alarming news that a convicted serial killer just escaped from the asylum. People are asked to report to the police if they see a strange-looking man with a hook on one hand. The girl is frightened and requests the boy to rush home immediately. The boy initially disagrees and tries to convince his date to stay, but eventually they both head back. When they arrive at the girl's house, she gets down and tries to close the car door, but it won't close. She freezes as she sees a hook suspending from the doorknob. I'm sorry, what? So was the guy she was making out with the guy with the hook? How the fuck do you miss that? Or was the guy with the hook at her house and grabbed the door? I'm confused! Either way, she's fucked. A girl is alone at home one night for the first time. She has a dog to keep her company. The girl listens on the news about a serial killer on the loose. She goes to sleep after locking all the doors and windows except for one which doesn't close. Suddenly, she's awakened by a dripping sound. Scared thoroughly, she tries to go back to sleep but puts her hand down the bed for a reassuring lick from her dog. As the dripping sound continues, she goes to check on the taps in the kitchen, bathroom, and everywhere else but finds nothing. She returns to her bedroom and puts the hand down again for the dog to lick. The dripping sound continues and the girl is too frightened to fall asleep. But as her hand gets licked from under the bed, she slowly falls asleep. In the morning, when she opens the closet, she finds her dog killed and upside down. The dripping sound was from the dog's blood. On the closet door, she sees a message. Humans can lick too. No thank you. Fuck that. And the poor dog. No. Why didn't she walk towards the tapping water sound? The guiding voice. Got lost with girlfriend at night in Waco, Texas. Roads were deserted, no people, no cars. Then saw one lone person standing on the corner as I made a turn. I heard a friendly male voice in the vehicle as if sitting in the back seat say to me, "You're going the wrong way." I noticed I was indeed going the wrong way on the one-way road, so I did a U-turn. The road took me directly to the main highway. Asked my girlfriend a bit later if she heard the voice too, and she burst into tears because she had been so freaked out by it, she thought she was going insane or something. I think the fact that they both heard the voice would have freaked me out more, but at least it was friendly and guided them the right way. My wife and I overheard my 2-year-old daughter on the baby monitor wake up on Saturday morning and say, "What? Okay, I'll tell her." Then get up and come into our bedroom and told my wife, "Mary says you're doing a good job." Mary was her grandmother that she was extremely close to that passed away. My friend Joe. I had this imaginary friend named Joe. Was pretty normal imaginary friend stuff to begin with. My parents would ask about him and I'd respond with something like, "I like Joe. He has curly black hair. He likes to play outside." Nothing interesting. Until one day I came out with, "Joe has to work a lot, but Joe's boss doesn't like him." When asked why, I responded with, "Oh, it's because Joe's black." As if it was obvious. Now this wouldn't have been weird at all if I hadn't grown up in a very small all-white town. And I was about 3 years old. I didn't know, or rather hadn't been taught, that racism was a thing. This continued for a while. I'd mention Joe now and then, sometimes talking about what he did for fun or his favorite things, other times mentioning that his boss hits him and shouts all the time. After a few months, I go to my mom one day and have a conversation that went something like this. "Joe's really happy today. His boss isn't coming back." "Why?" "He's dead." "Oh yeah? How did he die?" "He ended himself from up there," as I pointed up towards the attic door. I don't remember much of this. I definitely remember having an imaginary friend named Joe. When my daughter was 3, she had an imaginary friend named Kelly who lived in her closet. Kelly sat in a little rocking chair while she slept, played with her, etc. Typical imaginary friend shit. Anyway, fast forward 2 years later. The wife and I are watching the new Amityville, the one with Ryan Reynolds, and our daughter walks out right when dead girl goes all black-eyed. Far from being disturbed, she said, "That looks like Kelly." "Kelly who?" we say. "You know, the dead girl that lived in my closet." My son from the age of 3 always tells me about the creeper man who lives in my mom and dad's bedroom. He brings it up after he visits them. I made the mistake once of asking what he looked like. My son said, "Oh, he doesn't have a face." Yikes. The little girl. My grandfather had a camp on Lake Daring in New Hampshire when I was a kid. One day when I was 6 or so, I fell off the dock and into the water. I couldn't swim. While under, I distinctly remember seeing a little girl down there who told me to look up towards the sun and just keep kicking and I'd be fine. I swam to the surface just in time for my grandfather to swoop me up and pull me back on the dock. And yes, I found out later that a little girl drowned in that lake near the same spot, of course. That is insane. And the fact that she remembers this? Crazy. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a good Halloween. I love you so much. Bye!